CatSynth TV.
What's up, everybody? JB here for CatSynth TV. Today, we're taking a look at Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. One size fits all 50th anniversary box set. I am so excited to talk about this. I'm telling you, I'm so excited. Before we get started, I want to ask you to please subscribe to this channel for more cultural content coming out regularly. Please consider underwriting our efforts. There are links to Patreon, Ko-Fi, merch, etc. All of that down there below. And if you like what you see here, give it a thumbs up. Leave us a comment. Share out the video. Let us know that you're watching because we do it all for you. You know what I'm saying? Hey, let's dive right into this thing. Man, one size fits all. Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. This was one of the first Frank Zappa albums I ever bought. I saw a little clip on cable TV, late night, remember USA Network, Night Flight, all that kind of stuff, whatever. Back in the 80s, I saw Inca Roads, and it was, the performance that later appeared on, Token is Extreme, etc., Dub Room Special, whatever it was, and it was like, what is this? What is this? It totally fried my teenage mind, man. I'm telling you. I was like, I gotta check this stuff out. It took a couple years, but eventually, that kind of stuck in my brain. Frank Zappa, Inca Roads, this thing about UFOs or whatever. And I got the record and instantly fell in love with it. So I was so excited when they announced that this 50th anniversary box set was coming out. And here it is. And I'm so excited to talk to you about it. First of all, let's talk about the album itself. The album included in this box set is the 2012 remaster. It's the same remastering that came out back in 2012 when Universal took over. So if you're expecting a different master or whatever it may be, you know what I'm saying? Just buyer beware. Go into it knowing that it's the same one. But let me tell you, this album, this Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention album, incidentally, the last Frank Zappa album to bear the full name Mothers of Invention on it. So kind of the ending of an era right there a little bit. Also interesting little tidbit, if you will. One size fits all. Look at this. One size fits all. See that? O-S-F-A. You rearrange those a little bit. What do you get? You get sofa right there on the cover. You see that? That's a sofa. Get it? Ha ha ha. Okay. Maybe that was a little on the nose, but fantastic stuff. Man, this whole album, start to finish, it's got my favorite tunes on there. Inca Roads. What can I say about this elixir? You know what I mean? This is one of his greatest compositions to me. It's got the jazz, it's got the 20th century composition, if you like the classical elements. It's got the rock. It's just got fantastic stuff, and the lyrics are interesting, and George Duke just sings the hell out of this thing. Man, just amazing. Top to bottom, it's just got these great tunes. You got Inca Roads, Can't Afford No Shoes, you know what I'm saying? That's Sofa Number One. Sofa Number One, incidentally, you know what I'm saying, dates all the way back to what, 1971? There was a recording of the Flo and Eddie band, the 1971 version of the band that appeared on You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 1. This piece, Sofa, was originally written as part of a larger piece. I believe it was called Divan, something like that. And we just, for many years knew it from this excerpted bit on this album, but one of Zappa's most beautiful melodies. He was really capable of doing beauty when he wasn't being, kind of a wise guy or whatever. I mean, some of the instrumental stuff is just so amazingly beautiful. And just, not just the harmony and the melody going over it, but the orchestration, there's a lot of care put into it. The original end of side A ended with Pajama People. Again, a piece that dates back at least to the, 1973 band, right? Didn't we have a reading, at least, of the lyrics that ended up on Pajama People back on Road Tapes Venue 2? Remember that one that came out a while back that had the Jean-Luc Ponty band? Kind of, Frank Zappa, you gotta love the humor, but sometimes it's like, writing a song about how boring the people in your band are, you know what I And it's like, okay, whatever, you know what I mean, whatever. Moving on to side two. Side two, of course, started off on the original vinyl with bum bum bum, the Florentine Pogan. Florentine Pogan, my God, what a beautiful song this is. Just beautiful construction, just amazing, amazing. After that was Evelyn, a Modified Dog. That's right, just this short little, interlinking piece. Forgive my stumbling, bumbling about that. I'm trying to look for the right word. It has that line, though, interestingly enough, in the song about pedal de crest, panchromatic resonance, right? Inside the Steinway, et cetera, et cetera. If you know what that is, that's kind of a sideways reference to Lumpy Gravy and Civilization Phase 3, right? The piano people, not to be confused with the pajama people, of course, but the piano people, the people inside the piano, the voices inside the piano that appear on those two albums. Kind of interesting sideways link there if you want to delve a little deeper. But San Bernardino, man, great kind of bluesy tune, featuring some harmonica by Bloodshot Rollin' Red or whatever the alias was. It's Captain Beefheart, of course, playing harmonica on that. San Bernardino, interestingly enough, one of these kind of three geographically nostalgic tunes of Frank Zappa from this era, right? On one end, we have over here Village of the Sun, of course, talking about Sun Village. You see Sun Village right there. This one, San Bernardino, of course, kind of a local little contraction of the name of San Bernardino, right? And San Bernardino, you see it right here on the map. And coming on the album after this, of course, we have Cucamonga. That's going to be on Bongo Fury, which is the next album chronologically. And hopefully we'll get a Bongo Fury box this year too, right? 1975 is when that came out, isn't it? And that also 50 years. But hey, we got plenty already this year. But let's see, Cucamonga's right over here on the map. But yeah, 75 was kind of like a watershed year, for Frank, and it's just all of this wonderful music was coming out. One of the most amazing things, of course, is the appearance of Johnny Guitar Watson on this album. Of course, Johnny Guitar Watson was one of Frank's initial inspirations for actually picking up the guitar, and to have him do these incredible, like mind-blowing vocals on this album is just, it's unbelievable. You can't, you're going along and you're saying, man, this album's really great. I don't think it can get any better. I don't think it can really get that much better. And then Johnny Guitar Watson, yeah, baby, comes in and just takes it to a whole new level, man. Oh my goodness. On the original album, after San Bernardino, of course, we had Andy. And Andy, another one of these beautiful songs, the themes in there. And again, there's a little bit of Zappa's back history, right? 44 men stashed away in Tank C, and there's only one shower, don't apply to Bobby. If you ever read the real Frank Zappa book, anyone out there read the real Frank Zappa book, you know a little bit about the history, about the 1964, 1965, whatever it was, bust for pornography, and when Frank spent a little time in jail. You know what I mean? If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look that up. Really fascinating story, but he tells a similar story about 44 men, et cetera, really interesting stuff. And also, interesting too, in this song, Andy talks about potato-headed Bobby, right, which is a phrase, just what is it, 1976, you get a reference to that at the end of the Illinois Enema Bandit, right? Ray White sings a line about potato-headed Bobby, or is it beheaded Bobby? You know what I mean? There's a little thing on there, but it appears again in Bobby Brown Goes Down. Not my favorite Zappa song. Let me just put that. but in it, and then again in Thingfish. Ooh, Fish. Oh my goodness, Thingfish. That's a whole nother topic for a whole different video. In any case, we end with Sofa number 2, the German language version of the Sofa theme. Beautiful stuff. So for the box set, going on from there, we have a number of studio outtakes following the stuff that was on the original album. We got a different mix of Inca Roads, kind of an earlier mix, and then we have what's called Ralph Stuffs His Shoes. And don't be fooled by the title. This is an earlier version and earlier mixes of Can't Afford No Shoes. Ralph, apparently a reference to Ralph Humphrey, the former drummer of Frank Zappa and the Mothers. It's interesting, again, you know, this era of Zappa and the Mothers, like I said, those bands with George Doak and Tom Fowler on bass, you know what I mean? On one end, you got Ralph Humphrey, you got Chester Thompson in the middle, and you got Terry Bozzio on the other end. This is golden stuff, man. This is absolutely some of the most beautiful Frank Zappa stuff ever. And you know, I gotta say, this album is got to be the gold standard as far as the sound. It's got to be the most beautiful sounding, to me, Frank Zappa rock album. Let's put it that way. I mean, you know, the classical albums, quote unquote, you know, I got my favorites of those, and I got my favorites of the Synclavier albums, but as far as the rock albums go, this one's full and rounded and punchy at the same time. Really beautiful stuff. Oh my goodness. Any case, getting back to all the extra, because I know that's what you're here for. We get a number of different takes of Can't Afford No Shoes, right, goes on. There's different mixes and basic tracks of Sofa Number 1. Beautiful stuff. Moving on to Disc 2. Disc 2 is like, whoa, this is some revelatory stuff right here, right? Starts off with Pajama People, a different version of it. Of course, the version that we all know and love that appeared on the original album had Frank doing that kind of very close mic'd, laconic vocal, kind of swift to behold. You know, you hear it kind of, he's doing that weird enunciation that he does sometimes. You know, this has a different vocal on it. This is much more of a kind of direct, much more, you know, upfront kind of punchy vocal. So it's interesting to hear it. He made, in my opinion, of course, the right choice to go with the vocal that ended up on the finished album, and I'm sure Frank was, of course, happy with it because that's what he did. You know what I mean? Can't fault his judgment there. Different kind of versions of Florentine Pogan. There was a different mix of the KCET performance. The KCET performance, of course, that we know from Token of His Extreme, and we'll talk a little bit more about that video in a little bit. But a different mix of that, and also a different solo section. So what he did was, you know, that solo section was kind of a modular element. What he did was he did a different version of the guitar solo, not by overdubbing a guitar solo on the backing track, but doing a completely different performance of that. So he could edit it together either sonically or videoally, right, visually, right, for the finished performance. Okay, so moving on, we have Evelyn, a Modified Dog. You hear just Frank and George kind of working it out. Sounds like George is playing a tack piano right on this thing. It sounds like kind of a cross between a written piece with some improvisatory elements, because, you know, the vocal line that's doubled by the piano is very much, you know, it sounds like a written thing because it's very tricky rhythmically, and they're doing it together, right? But there's some things you hear Frank at one moment said, you know, do this downward descending thing with your left hand. So it's kind of interesting hearing them working through stuff like that. You know, I mean, I'm into it. You know, maybe other people aren't going to be, but hey, that's okay. You came to my video. You know what I'm saying? Okay, moving on. We have a piece here called Bitch, Bitch, Bitch. And this is actually an early version of the track San Bernardino, the composition that becomes San Bernardino, with some additional elements. There's dun, 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 dun. There's this little descending bit there, which is another one of those modular elements you heard going back. If you remember that the Zappa Mothers album, Ahead of Their Time, this bit I believe was in Sleeping in a Jar, right? Da, ba, da, la, 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 right? And then there's that dun, 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 that was kind of exclusive to that live version. Well, that bit has been glommed onto this performance, but it doesn't end up in, of course, the finished San Bernardino track. So it's really interesting to hear this at work in progress. And, you know, the other interesting thing is to say is this piece, Bitch, Bitch, Bitch. I mean, you know, come on, Frank, you know, great title, right? You know, but it has these lyrics in here, which San Bernardino, I love those lyrics, and I think they're great, and I think they tell a story, and they're clever and all this. These earlier lyrics, boy, I'm glad he went back and rewrote it, because it's just, it's just that stuff. You know what I mean? It's that kind of, all right, Frank, it's the doo-doo jokes and this and that and whatever, and it's like, come on, man, try a little bit harder. And he did. And he actually came up with something really fantastic. So good on you, Frankie. You know what I mean? Hey, Frankie Zappa, you know what I'm talking about? Hey, baby. Okay, so moving on from there, we have a studio run through of Bitch, Bitch, Bitch. Did I mention that earlier? This sounds like a rehearsal kind of take, and it's got some different, it has Jeff Simmons on there, right? And there's a little bit in the booklet about Jeff coming back and this and that. Did he come back? Did he not come back? When was this recorded? Who knows, whatever. But there is a take of it recorded at Caribou Ranch. Let me do a little digression. Some of this material here was recorded at Caribou Ranch up in Colorado, and there's little reminiscences in the booklet about that. Caribou Ranch, of course, William James Guercio, who was involved with the Mothers at an early stage, like pre-Freak Out, I believe. He was briefly in the band, but went on to produce Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and all that. And there's some interesting stuff you can go look up about him and his relationship to Chicago and how this whole recording complex was funded and all of that. There's a lot of other information about that. There's a really interesting Chicago documentary which kind of goes into the business entanglements, etc. But I digress. So getting back to the point, from there we have a number of different early mixes of San Bernardino. An early one with Napoleon doing some alternate lyrics again, some different alternate lyrics from not the same ones that we heard back on Bitch, 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 etc. And then some different mixes, etc., different mixes, rough mix of Sofa number 2. Moving on to disc 3 and 4. This is the live stuff. All of these Zappa boxes come out with period sort of live material added onto it. Some of it has been a little bit on the rougher side, but it's been just totally invaluable as far as setting the scene for what's going on here. So disc 3 and 4, it's all live stuff from that Northern European tour of late 74. It's like the same band that you heard on You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore Volume 2, right? The one with the blue cover, but it doesn't have, it's kind of rougher sounding 4-track mixes. It's not multi-track mixes. And hey, Ian Be About, it doesn't have that kick drum thing in there. You know what I'm talking about? Hey, Ian Be About, you know what I mean? Hey, but I'm getting off topic here. But it's all fantastic stuff. It's just, it's really great to hear live versions of this stuff. Some of this stuff really comes alive. There's one of those very expansive improvisations that goes into some really funky areas. And then, it's part of the whole Dupree's Paradise mega performance. It sounds at one point, there's a note on there that there's an interpolation rather, of a Wilson Pickett tune. It sounds to me like a minute or so of almost like Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. We're listening to it, and I said, what is that chord progression? Because that sounds really familiar. But it may be, again, something else entirely. But it's really, really interesting to hear this stuff. Okay, so moving on, then the fifth disc. The fifth disc is actually a Blu-ray. In a Blu-ray, you have a Dolby Atmos. Fantastic mix of the whole album. Again, you have some period or one period mix, one period quad mix that Frank did, and another multi-channel mix that Frank did in '93. So shortly before he died, he did this multi-channel mix. And then you have 2 video performances. It looks like it's the same performance basically that we know from A Token of His Extreme and the Dub Room Special, right? Those 2 DVDs kind of share a lot of the same material. But this has been, re-edited or unedited, I guess might be the way to say it. It doesn't have all the Bruce Bickford animation and things running through it. And you know, it's interesting. I mean, I love the animation. As I said, the animation is one of the things that really caught my eye when I first saw this stuff. But it's good to see the performances in their entirety, you know what I'm saying, and see the musicians just interacting like, you know, these are some great musicians right here. They're amazing. These are amazing musicians. You've got to check these guys out. Okay, let's look at the package itself. Very nice box here. Got a number of discs here. Let's take a look at the booklet, flip through it a little bit. We have notes here from the one and only Joe Travers, probably the greatest vaultmeister ever in history. Joe Travers, man. I'm telling you, it's like getting presents all year long. It's like, you know, your birthday and you get a present, and like holidays at the end of the year and you get a present. But you get presents from Frank Zappa, and the Frank Zappa, I love this Frank Zappa stuff. And Joe, you're the best. And you know, there's some points in here where they actually talk about hunch and toot. Hunch and toot. When are we going to see the hunch and toot box, Joe? Hunch and toot. Put it all in one space. You know, the hunch and toot stuff, now that they put out the Sleep Dirt without the vocals on it, all those hunch and toot tracks need to find a home, Joe. Put out the hunch and toot box, please. Please, Joe, put out the hunch and toot box. Okay. Getting off topic again. We got Frick. We got the dude from Rolling Stone here. What the frick? You know what I'm talking about? Doing some notes as always. And we got notes by the always wonderful Ruth Underwood. Ruth Underwood, the one and only. You know what I mean? Incredible person, incredible musician. My goodness, I loved it. You know what I'm saying? She's wonderful. So wrapping it up, one size fits all. Again, you know, Frank Zappa fanatics, you're going to need to have this. You're absolutely going to need to have this. I mean, what can I say? You know what I mean? You're going to need to check this out. I think you'll really get a kick out of this kind of thing. You know, sometimes, you know, having 4 or 5 different mixes of Can't Afford No Shoes in a row, it's like, okay, how many times you're going to listen to it? I'm not sure. But the live stuff on there, you're absolutely going to check out multiple times. I love it. I love it. You know what I mean? And to hear those long improvisations where you get these kind of one-off little bits being tossed off, you know, by the band. It's so incredible. You know, this band could do anything. And it was like I said, it's kind of coming to the end of an era of Frank Zappa. I mean, you know, 75, this is the stuff, you know, 76, is when, for me, it starts to get a little, and then 77, I don't know. We'll burn that bridge when we get there. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, man. In any case, please go check this out. Do yourself a favor and check this out.
To find out more about Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, One Size Fits All 50th Anniversary Edition, please visit the official website and check out the description below this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.
Hey, you're watching CatSynth.